This is a really funny video, and I'm not gonna hop on the incel bandwagon of being like, yeah, because girls would be incels, or however the average, incel rager would respond to this. But it's funny to me because videos like this and the recognition that if roles were reversed for women for men, that they would probably not be much better off, is just actually the reality. And I'm going to get into some statistical examples because the problem with TikToks is that you come across people like this because what people do is they just view farm and they rage bait and they just say whatever nonsense comes off the top of their head without actually like studying the underlying issues that are facing our economy and our society right now. So let's get into this video of this person who just makes these bold claims. And the real problem is that everyone tries to belittle and demean men in particular, I feel like, but also just that's the whole response is for shortcomings of people in society. And let's talk about particular with men, because men typically tend to be the providers. And if you look at past generations, men were able to own homes and pay for their wives and children. But I'm going to get into some examples of inflation and see it, and have it help you understand why it's so much more difficult for our generation to own a home, even just for basic economic needs and things like that. So let's get into this video and I'll kind of dive into some uh, reasons why this person is not making any sense and they're actually being an idiot. Okay.
Guys, the straights are not okay. Why is it trending among especially like men in their 20s saying, oh, women are no longer submissive, feminism has failed, I'm a traditional man and I want a traditional woman? And I'm like, bro, do you even own a home? Can you pay her bills? Are you paying her cell phone bill and her car payment? And
See, the problem with our society and our world is that everyone has a cell phone and has this instantaneous ability to say whatever garbage comes to the top of their mind, record it, and then put it on the internet. And what people don't realize is that TikTok is basically a Chinese psyop to make Americans stupider. So what gets promoted is not necessarily what is the most productive or thought-provoking or most intellectual opinions on TikTok. It's obviously, or it's mostly and predominantly divisive and negative content that gets promoted on TikTok. And I hate TikTok as a platform, but it's a great indicator for popular opinion because it's a very popular app. And so when you see people like this and this kind of thought ideology gets millions and millions of views, and it's very popular amongst people under 30, I would say. And this ideology of, I mean, just this guy's tone of voice being condescending. The straights are not okay. Are you a traditional man? Oh my God, bro, like shut the fuck up. And the problem with this is that his statements are all refutable and are all illogical and are divisive and are negative and don't contribute anything other than him basically making himself feel good because of the dopamine rush he gets from the views and the likes, and then the people who are reinforcing him with this echo chamber thought consensus in the comments that he's receiving. And what I'm refuting is this stupid idea that he's presenting that all men suck and all men are lazy losers because they can't be traditional and pay for everything for a woman, from her car note to her insurance to all of the bills, the food. And it's a lazy and it's a stupid and short-sighted thought process that these types of people engage in, and it completely ignores economic reality. And the matter of fact is to try and belittle people, and I'm going to talk about men because this is a popular thing, because everyone on the internet that I'm seeing is trying to just shit on and constantly belittle and degrade men for quote unquote shortcomings or being a loser, which is what this guy is talking about, where he's talking about how he's basically insinuating that men are losers because they can't be traditional. Well, the problem is that the traditional man that you're referring to is the one that was from the 50s and 80s, where households could survive off of one income and inflation wasn't as rampant. And we're going to get into some actual data here to back up these claims, because the problem is that TikTok is short form content. So you just say whatever nonsense comes to your mind, and in 30 seconds you upload it. But to actually analyze things and come up with actual good, like smart thoughts, it takes time. I had to sort through graphs and look at numbers and data and percentages for about an hour and a half to find all the data that I needed to refute this claim. And that's the problem, is that to actually put together something intelligent, it takes time. It's 1,000 times easier to just blurt whatever nonsense comes to your mind in 30 seconds than to actually do research and study so you can actually make a credible claim about whatever it is that you're saying. But let's just get into this man's points, and I'm just going to go through it and just say why this is so idiotic and makes no sense. Okay, so let's look at income and how dramatically impacted and how disgusting the attempt to belittle men for not owning homes is, considering it's just negating inflation and the economic crisis that we face. Like, I don't know if you're aware of this, but we are living in a housing crisis. To try and degrade men between the age of 20 and 30 right now, and I would say 20 and 35, for not owning homes is absolutely asinine and absurd. And I'm going to show you why. So let's look at some data here, because when I like to make points, I like to make points with data. I don't like to just say whatever nonsense comes to the top of my mind. So to refute this ridiculous ideology to try to degrade men between the ages of, I would say, 20 and 35 for not owning homes, is just absolutely stupid. So let's look at some data here. So we're going to look at the historical U.S. home prices, how they have risen in the last 25 to 30 years. And I use medians because means or averages are typically skewed by the top. Like, for example, when I talk about income earning, I'm typically breaking it down by actual percentages, like looking at it more in depth and just looking at averages, because, and I'll just show you, because averages are always skewed by the top. And in America, your top 10% of income earners earn roughly 48% of the total income. So if you look at just from an average standpoint, it's actually going to reflect, it's going to look like people make more money than they do, because the top income earners make so much that it skews averages, which is why I use medians, because median is more accurate, in my opinion, because it's right in the middle. So half will make less and half will make more. So it's a good kind of way, I think, to look at it, because, but anyway, let's get into it. So historical median home values. So since we'll look at it kind of like, because we're going to look at about men from their 30s and 20s. So we'll be looking at how prices have increased since roughly, 1995, that kind of starting off there as a point. So if we look at, let's go to like 1997. So the median home price in February 1997 was around $112,000. If we look here, that prices increased to about $420,000 as of February 2025, sorry. And so we've seen almost a quadruple, a 4x here in home prices and how much they have increased. Well, have wages kept up with that? Let's look at real median personal income in the United States. So since 1997, the median, which is half of the American population, they were earning $33,000. This is for individuals. And today that number is $42,000. So while the price of the houses has increased by $300,000, the average American makes $9,000 more. So you start to kind of see why statements like this, they don't do anything. They make everyone stupider, and they make everyone more hostile. And this whole idea that's been created that somehow if you make enough to get by and pay your bills, obviously you should have ambitions and want to make more, but it is being completely overlooked how actually inflated our economy is. Like, our purchasing power for our dollar, just our ability to buy homes, is been devastated. I mean, the median American went from making $33,000 to $42,000, but the prices of houses went from being $120,000 to $420,000. So how is this a relevant point to try and belittle someone for not owning a home when the economic conditions that were given to them at birth basically destroyed their ability to do that? I mean, if you look at, so let's just, I mean, take for example, just the financial impact that was experienced by people 30, 40 years ago buying houses to now. It's not even the same. And so it's just this whole ideology and this stupidity that is just really, really annoying to see. And so what I want to kind of get into here as well is I want to show like how really disparaging it has become. And we're going to look, because the median shows that middle, right? We're going to look more now individually at the classes to kind of break this down even more. So if we look at our bottom 50%, we're going to go back to 1997. So in 1997, and what this is sorry, this is real factor income growth. So this is showing how your classes from the bottom 50%, the middle 40%, the top 10%, and the top 1%, how their incomes have grown and this is personal income, not household income. So we're going to look at how personal income has grown for particular classes since 1997. So if you look at your bottom 50% in 1996, let's go to 1997, they were making about $17,000 a year was the average income for someone who was in the bottom 50%. And if you look at that now, they're making $18,000. And obviously the bottom 50% is going to include some absolute losers. I understand that. So, but you've seen an increase from the bottom 50%. It's from $17,000 of income to $18,000. So let's look at the middle 40%, because that's a better indication, because that's like more of your working class and people who are actually making money. So the middle 40% in 1997, they had an average income of $75,000. And now they make about $91,000. So they saw a $16,000 increase in personal income. So again, houses increased from $120,000 during this person's lifetime. And so keep in mind, if you were almost 30, you were born here. So what control do you have over this? You can't even start working until 2013. So by the time you can start working when you're 16 in 2013, let's see. So okay, so you're 16. So housing prices haven't decreased as dramatically yet, right? They've gone up $70,000, but you're 16 here. So let's say now you're 22 and you just graduated from college. So let's add another 6 years on here to 2019. Okay, so $250,000. So the income, so the houses have now almost about doubled in price, and you're 22 here. But I mean, most 22-year-olds have just graduated college. They don't have a down payment. Let's be realistic. So let's say 25, 26, now you're ready to try to buy a house. So let's add another 4 years onto that. So now you're 25, 26, and houses are $400,000. So they increased in your lifetime from $120,000 to $400,000. Meanwhile, you're in the working class. The wages that you potentially could have earned during this time period, let's go just from 2000 let's go when you're 20 years old. So we're going to go from 2017, because in this example, the person was 16 at 2013. So now they are 20 years old. So the income that you potentially were probably going to make is increased from, okay, well, that's a good number, right? $90,000 to $91,000. So from 2018, when this example took place, or I guess 2017. Anyway, the income has gone from 90,000 to 91. So in your lifetime, incomes have grown $16,000, but housing prices have increased by $300,000. Like, how does this even make sense? So this is insane. So yeah, this might be boring, but this is just, if you're listening to this and you're seeing this, I hope you're getting why I hate takes like this and why you shouldn't feel discouraged by people who try to belittle you for like quote unquote, because these aren't shortcomings. This is just economic, uh, economic misfortunes, which are beyond your control. And so, I mean, one of the things though too is this income is kind of a lot. It's the middle 40%, and in the middle 40%, like the top 10% income, I believe starts at around $166,000. So the income is going to be a little bit skewed. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at actual individual income percentiles from the actual income level. So we'll be looking at like how many people are making $70,000 or less, because there's this idea that I keep seeing thrown around. And the problem is there's something called expectation inflation and hopeflation, because what happens with people like this, they have this or not parasite, it's not the right word, but virus and disease of a mindset which is plaguing their brains, which is this whole influencer lifestyle, Kardashian lifestyle. Like if you're not driving a Mercedes Benz and if you're not wearing designer clothes, like you're somehow a loser, which makes no sense. And so our societally, the focus and what we prioritize and what we praise is completely backwards. And what people don't understand is a lot of this is like people like this, they're really flexing their stupidity and how brainwashed they are by targeted advertising in brands and banks. Because when you kind of boil it down, like this whole idea of consumerism and materialism, a lot of it, and what people don't realize, is that they are being manipulated by the people who own these brands into idolizing and value them rather than common sense. So you spend your entire life thinking that if someone owns a Mercedes Benz, they're rich. But in reality, a Toyota Corolla is a better car and costs half the price. So these things, it's just a lot of stupidity that we see. And what ends up happening is because of these, whatever, how smart these brands have been, they've used the Kardashians and they've used rappers and they've used influencers to basically create this culture of consumers where what happens is these people start degrading you and they start seeing you as less and trying to belittle you because you don't own these shiny objects. And so it makes you start to conform and feel bad, and then you become a consumer, and so you spend your entire life trying to impress people. And then you see this, it's very prevalent in women now, where they want you to have all the latest and greatest, and but then there's this expectation which this guy is presenting, which then now you have to pay for all their stuff. So not only is everything more expensive and houses are more expensive and insurance is more expensive and food and cars, but as a man, in order to be this traditional man and not be a loser or whatever, you have to take on the financial burdens of two people. It's just like, it's so stupid. So let's get into individual incomes, and we're going to kind of set some expectations, because here's the reality. And going back to this girl where she was talking about how if she was a man, she'd be an incel gooner. And I'm not like, that's kind of a funny thought, but the word incel is used so loosely in gooner and because let's just look at it. So we're looking at individual income percentiles here, right? So since 2024, so to be, let's look at how the percentage of people that make like $75,000 or less. So 68% of people are making $75,000 or less. So when you go to 85, it's 75%. So 75%, or 74, sorry, 74% of Americans are making $85,000 or less. So does that mean 75% of our population are losers? Or does that mean that our economy is so inflated that the wages make it difficult for people just to barely sustain themselves, or even own homes? And so then we have been manipulated by these brands and these stupid people into thinking that if you don't make $100,000, you're a loser. But look at this. I mean, 79% of people are not making $100,000 a year. So if you're not making $100,000 a year, don't be discouraged, because it's not your fault. The jobs are not there, because if the jobs are there, you wouldn't see 80% of the population making $100,000. It's not possible for the entire population to be making this amount of money, because the wages and the wages that are being paid by jobs do not add up, and they're just not available. So there's only 20% of the jobs that are out there can pay you $100,000 or more. So this whole idea of like, you need to be a six-figure man, none of these ideas are rooted in actual reality and actual data. It's popular opinion, and people are putting out these stupid ideas and they catch on because the TikTok algorithm is busted. So yeah, this guy making these claims, he sounds like an actual idiot when you actually look at data. And if you're listening to this, what I want to say and what I hope you get from this is I'm not trying to be negative and I'm not trying to speak doom and gloom. Really, what I want you to understand is that do your best. And I mean, let's look at this. I mean, if you're making $85,000 a year, that's a great income. A single man who makes $85,000 a year, you should be living off of maybe 3 to 35. So you're taking home about 70 of that, and then your expenses are going to be from $36,000 to $45,000, I believe. So you should be able to save, if you could make $85,000 a year, you should be able to save about almost 25 to 30 grand a year. And that's good. That's a lot of money. So don't see these videos and think, oh man, I'm a loser because I only make 65 grand. Well, I mean, if you're a loser, I mean, 62% of the population of America, 62, 61, whatever this number is, it doesn't matter. But yeah, 61% of the population are losers too. So, but the problem is, and this is going to be my final point, is that these videos that these people make are wastes of time and they're pointless. They don't do anything. They do more harm than good. And what really the narrative and the what we should be focusing on is uplifting each other and creating this community of positivity and encouragement where we help, because life is not easy. But if you can survive, I mean, we have a great amount of abundance in our country. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of food, there's plenty of energy, AC, electricity, right? So being okay with just surviving, which is what humans have done for thousands of years. We haven't always had this consumerist, materialist society. This is a modern day. This is a it's a relatively new phenomenon. This whole culture of hyper consumerism, right? And so being content with just being able to pay your bills, have a little bit of money on the side, save for retirement, obviously have some goals and want to be able to save up money. Like my personal income goal is to save up $30,000 to $40,000 a year. If you have that, you're going to be pretty good if you can save $30,000 a year. But the internet will tell you you're a loser because you're only making 75 grand a year. It's just nonsense. And so, what I want you to get out of this is that we should really not, like, these types of videos are so stupid, and just, it's like low IQ. It's the lowest possible IQ that is possessed by these individuals because they're completely not thinking about any sort of actual economic factors. It's just this weird, super weird populist ideology, which is rooted in stupidity. So, you know, in this video, I just hope, you go out there and be happy about who you are and don't let stupid people like this, because I'm going to keep saying this. These people are stupid. So to get upset about idiots, like, if someone with special needs was to insult you, are you going to feel upset about it? No. And that's what I consider these people who have these opinions to be. I believe that they are special needs. That's what I consider them, because it's all relative, because they might as well be special needs because they don't actually add anything to the world. They're just burdens, and they make life worse for everyone, and they decrease everyone's mental health, and they make it a toxic and hostile place to live. So with that being said, have some income goals. I think definitely trying to make $70,000 or more, save $20,000 a year is feasible. And, obviously try to make more, but don't feel bad because you're making 65, 70 grand. If you're making 65, 70 grand a year, you're doing good. And I just hope that, you go out and you try to, one, avoid these toxic people, but two, not match them and be toxic. And we can kind of change this culture where people encourage people, and we do our best, and we're happy, and we're content, and we're grateful for waking up and being able to wake up and make money. But with that being said, I'm going to close this episode. This is the Based Blueprint. If you did listen, thank you so much, and have a great day.